When people say are times crazier now? Oh, los tiempos is really bad now. I'm like, I honestly
we know more now. Before we didn't know about stuff. Did you hear about the guy that's a firefighter? There was a guy that was a firefighter. He's retired. He been retired. What am I saying? He was dying. He was like 90. So imagine when he was a firefighter, right? He was a firefighter in the freaking 20s and 30s, right? In his deathbed, I think it was the nurse was talking to him. And one of the things he said, they were talking about the world or whatever. And he said that when he was a firefighter, if it was a black family in the house, they would let them burn.
They would let them.
They wouldn't even go in there and save them. They would just leave them in there. And he, now that he's older, he's like, I regret everything I did. And it haunts me hearing them screaming in there. He's like, at the time, I thought it was fine. But now as he's older, he's thinking back. He's like, I shouldn't have did that.
Oh, this is what I'm saying. When people say, "Oh, was it?" I asked the question: was it bad then, or was it bad worse now? And everyone says it's worse now. And I agree with you. It's because we have technology and we're exposed to more. That doesn't change the fact that it was. To me, then that means that it was worse back then. We just know about it more, like you said. We're just exposed to it now. At the touch of our fingertips, we're exposed to it. But it was by far worse back then. Because you knew nobody was watching. That's a good example with the firefighter. Because it's exactly what we're saying. It wasn't until years later that he's like, shit, this was wrong morally.
Again, back then, different mentality. That's why when people talk about like, oh, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington owned slaves. I'm like, yeah, during that time, that was normal. They didn't probably think anything about it.
The old white guy's friends leave. And he's left only with him and his wife. So he gets up to go to the restroom, and as he passes by the guy's table who was sitting right across from him, he says, "Happy birthday, young man. Got to be a lot of memories." And the white guy was like, "Yeah, thank you," and nod his head, keep on going. He goes to the restroom. Now he says when he comes out, the white guy goes, "Hey, come in." So he said, yeah. So he starts listening. He says, "You have no idea about the things that I remember that I wish I could not remember." Now I'm paraphrasing. He said, "But I used to be a firefighter back in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, 60s.
It was a different time."
That's not even that long ago.
And dude said when he was a firefighter, he would go into buildings and there were black people in those buildings. He would let them burn. There were black babies, elderly people, just black people, period. They wouldn't risk it. He wasn't the only one. It was a practice. That's what they did.
Everybody did it.
They would let black people burn. He said it haunts him to this day because he has nightmares about he has to see a therapist, and it gets better, but it's still there.
All right. But so if people say, is it worse now or back then? People don't understand, bro. The stuff that happened back then, there was no cameras, none of that. Now we know and we correct right away.
Or we second guess, like, wait.
Yeah, exactly.
They're watching.
So if there's a problem, we fix it. Back then, there'd be a problem for years before anybody said anything about it.
Or anything at all.
Yeah, anything at all.
It got buried like that.
Yeah,
like this nigga story.
Yeah, he was older before he said anything.
He's done.
Yeah, he's done.
He's just living in that memory now with the right moral compass attached.
Yeah.
That he's like, fuck, I gotta live with it.